Hello, welcome to Unit 2, Lesson 2, Introducing Proportional Relationships with Tables, Cool Down Activity. So, this question gives you a scenario where when you mix two colors of paints in equivalent ratios, the resulting color is always the same. It wants you to complete the table as you answer the questions. So the first question is, how many cups of yellow paint should you mix with 1 cup of blue paint to make the same shade of green? Explain or show your reasoning. So if you think back to the activity with the Kool-Aid mix, in order to keep the shades the same, the ratio between the drink mix and the water had to be the same. So if you remember, there was a darker color and then there was 2 that were a lighter color pink. And those 2 that were a lighter color pink had the same equivalent ratio. So that's why they were the same color. This also applies to paint. So if we look at the table, it gives us one ratio and it tells us that we have 2 cups of blue paint and 10 cups of yellow paint. What we need to do is figure out the constant of proportionality. So what can I multiply 2 by to get to 10? Now to figure that out, I need to do some division first. Now if you recall, in the activities we talked about how to figure out what to multiply the first column by, you can set up the ratio of the second column to the first column. So that ratio would be 10 over 2. When I divide that, I get 5. So that means my constant of proportionality is 5, so I'm going to multiply by 5. Now, since I want equivalent ratios, I'm going to use the same constant of proportionality to determine how many cups of yellow paint when I have 1 cup of blue paint. So I'm going to also multiply by 5. Okay, so 1 times 5 equals 5. So therefore, I would need 5 cups of blue paint. Now I want to also point out another strategy that you could have used. So you didn't have to use the constant of proportionality, but you could have also used the scale factored method and worked down the table. So when we work down the table, we would ask ourselves, well, how does 2 turn into 1? And we know that by multiplying by 1/2. So if I applied the same method, I could multiply 10 by 1/2 and still get 5. So either method is acceptable. Okay, question 2, it says make up a new pair of numbers that would make the same shade of green. Explain how you know that they would make the same shade of green. So, it doesn't really matter what number you start with. It could be whatever you want. So let's just choose a number for blue cups of blue paint. I'm going to choose the number 3. Okay, so if I have 3 cups of blue paint, I can then figure out how many cups of yellow paint by multiplying by, again, the constant of proportionality, 5. 3 times 5 is 15. So one possible combination would be 3 cups of blue paint and 15 cups of yellow paint. Now obviously you could have a different possible combination of numbers, just as long as whatever number you put in the blue column, if you multiply that number by 5, you should get the number in the yellow column. That's the important thing. Now it asked us to explain our reasoning, to explain how we know that they would make the same shade of green. So one possible response is that since we know these are equivalent ratios, we can use the constant of proportionality to multiply the first row by the second row. So since these must be equivalent ratios, we can use the constant of proportionality to multiply the first column. I think I said row before, it should be column. The first column and get the second column. So yes, you did need to have this written explanation. If you did not, pause this video and go ahead and copy down what I have written down. All right, the next question is, what is the proportional relationship represented in this situation? So what are we talking about? What is proportional to what? And in this case, we would say, I'm going to change color. So the relationship between the amount of blue paint is proportional to the amount of yellow paint. Oop, that's not yellow. Finally, it asks us to describe what the constant of proportionality is, and we identified that earlier on in the example when we were multiplying everything by 5. So we would say the constant of proportionality is 5. And if you think back to the lesson, we talked about how we use the letter K to represent constant of proportionality. So that's what I'm going to use in this case. So K equals 5. The constant of proportionality is 5. And what this represents, it represents the cups of yellow paint needed for 1 cup of blue paint. So in this case, for every 1 cup of blue paint, you will need 5 cups of yellow paint. All right, that is the lesson 2 cool down. Thank you.